What if I told you that a single line on a map could decide whether millions of people live in peace or wake up to war tomorrow morning? Every day, invisible borders determine who can trade, who can travel, who controls valuable resources, and even who survives. Some borders are protected by nothing more than a fence, while others are guarded by thousands of soldiers, advanced missiles, and constant surveillance. But here's the shocking part. The world's most important borders aren't always the longest or the most famous. They're the places where one small mistake could change global history overnight. Today, we're exploring the world's most important borders and why these narrow strips of land matter to every single person on Earth. When most people think of borders, they imagine checkpoints, passports, and customs officers. But in reality, borders are much more than lines separating countries. They control global trade routes, military strategy, natural resources, migration, and political influence. Every container ship carrying electronics, every pipeline transporting oil, every truck delivering food eventually crosses a border. If one critical border suddenly closes, the economic impact can spread across continents within days. That's why governments spend billions of dollars protecting borders that, on the surface, may look completely ordinary, but some borders are far more dangerous than others. Perhaps no border represents tension better than the Demilitarized Zone, or DMZ, separating North Korea and South Korea. Ironically, despite its name, it's one of the most heavily fortified places on Earth. For over 70 years, this narrow strip has divided two countries with completely different political systems, economies, and lifestyles. On one side, one of the world's largest economies and advanced technology. On the other, one of the world's most isolated governments with nuclear weapons. Millions of soldiers remain prepared for the possibility that this border could become active again. One misunderstanding here wouldn't stay local. It could immediately involve major global powers and affect international security. Another border that changed the world is the border between Ukraine and Russia. For decades, it was simply another international boundary. But today, it has become one of the most closely watched frontiers on the planet. The conflict has reshaped military alliances, disrupted global food supplies, increased energy prices, and changed security strategies across Europe. Countries thousands of miles away have felt the economic consequences because modern borders affect much more than neighboring nations. In today's interconnected world, one regional conflict can create global ripple effects within weeks. Now imagine a border that isn't entirely on land. The Taiwan Strait separates Taiwan from mainland China. At first glance, it's simply a stretch of water, but economically, it's one of the most important locations on Earth. Much of the world's advanced semiconductor production comes from Taiwan, powering smartphones, computers, vehicles, medical equipment, and artificial intelligence. If shipping or manufacturing around this area were interrupted, industries across the globe could face shortages. That's why governments, militaries, and businesses constantly monitor this region. Sometimes the world's most important border isn't marked by fences, but by waves. High above sea level, hidden among the Himalayas, lies another critical border. The border between India and China stretches across some of the harshest terrain on Earth. Temperatures fall far below freezing. Oxygen levels are dangerously low. Yet thousands of soldiers remain stationed there year-round. Several confrontations have occurred over disputed territory, reminding the world that geography still shapes global politics. Even mountains that appear empty on a map can become strategically priceless, because controlling high ground often means controlling military advantage. Nature itself becomes part of national defense. Not every important border is defined by military conflict. The border between the United States and Mexico is one of the busiest international borders anywhere. Every day, billions of dollars worth of goods cross between the two countries. Factories, agriculture, manufacturing, tourism, and supply chains all depend on this connection. At the same time, the border remains central to debates over immigration, security, labor, and international cooperation. It shows that borders aren't only about defense. They're also about economics, opportunity, and human movement. Here's where things become even more fascinating. As Arctic ice slowly melts, entirely new shipping routes and resource opportunities are emerging. Countries like the United States, Canada, Russia, Norway, and Denmark are paying increasing attention to this region. Beneath the Arctic lie enormous reserves of oil, natural gas, and valuable minerals. What was once an inaccessible frozen wilderness could become one of the world's most strategically important frontiers in the coming decades. Tomorrow's most important border may be one that barely exists today. Borders are far more than lines drawn on maps. They shape economies, determine military strategy, influence global trade, protect natural resources, and sometimes decide the future of entire civilizations. Every peaceful crossing, every cargo shipment, every diplomatic agreement depends on borders remaining stable, because when a critical border changes, the effects rarely stop there. They spread across oceans, markets, governments, and into the daily lives of millions of people around the world. So next time you look at a world map, remember this: the most powerful places on Earth aren't always the biggest countries. Sometimes they're simply the thin lines that separate them. If you enjoyed this documentary, subscribe for more videos explaining the hidden forces shaping our world. And tell us in the comments, which border do you think will have the biggest impact on the future?